looked like he might pull off an upset in the very big red state. Tom Pauken is the former chairman of the Republican Party of Texas and was a Trump delegate during the 2016 Republican National Convention.
Even though Beto O'Rourke lost in Texas, he lost narrowly in a solid Republican state, and he is giving an indication that he might be a candidate for president. And I could see a guy who's raised that much money being a formidable force in 2020.
And Pauken says O'Rourke has already created a buzz outside of Texas.
The Democratic operatives up in Iowa and New Hampshire are asking to have him up there, and they're not asking him simply because he ran a good race in Texas. They're looking at him seriously as a prospective Democratic candidate.
And Pauken doesn't think other 2020 Democratic candidates as being that credible.
Somehow O'Rourke, even though he's way to the left, has a likability factor about it that appeals to people. I don't think Booker does that, and I don't think the senator from California does that.
That senator being Kamala Harris, who many pundits believe will run. I'm Chad Groening.
Despite years of awareness and public service announcements, health officials say you are still exposed to the same level of secondhand smoke. Fox's Evan Brown reports.
The number of Americans still interacting with secondhand smoke hasn't dropped at all since 2011. The figures published today by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control say 58 million Americans who are not smokers are still exposed. That's about a quarter of all non-smokers. Certain groups have had even higher rates, like children, the impoverished, or even those who live in rental housing. Researchers say the decline could be due to slower adoption of laws banning smoking in public places. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Sign-ups are down for Obamacare this open enrollment season. Rachel Sutherland has that story.
Figures released from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services show that 3.2 million people have signed up for Obamacare this year, compared to 3.6 million the same time last year. Many Democrats blame the Trump administration for the slippage, but independent experts say there may be other reasons. In a strong economy, people are more likely to find jobs with coverage. Most of the estimated 10 million currently enrolled will have their coverage renewed automatically. Open enrollment ends December 15th. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
In world news this hour, peace talks on ending the war in Yemen. Here's Fox's Simon Owen.
Yemen's government and rebels meeting for talks in Sweden.
This is a massive international effort.
The negotiations brokered by UN Special Envoy Martin Griffiths, who says Yemen faces the prospect of famine, but insists
it is resolvable. There is a way that we can resolve the conflict.
More than 10,000 people have died in nearly 4 years of fighting between the government, backed by Saudi Arabia and the US, and rebels aligned with Iran. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
And China's foreign ministry is demanding that Canada release a top executive at Chinese telecom giant Huawei Technologies, who has been detained while in transit, and reveal the reasoning behind her arrest. Canadian authorities say Huawei's chief financial officer faces possible extradition to the U.S., which requested her detention on suspicion of trying to evade U.S. curbs on trade with Iran. And that's all our time for this hour. Find more news at onenewsnow.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to download the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Thanks for listening.
As we all know, Jesus is the reason for the season. But sadly, there are some folks who don't. Join the American Family Association and spread the word by ordering our Keep Christ in Christmas wristbands. You can purchase them in sets of 10, and if you buy more, you'll save more. Order by December 14th to receive them just in time for Christmas. You can share them with anyone. We just want to remind people that you can't have Christmas without Christ. Order yours now at afastore.net.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If this is the best we've got coming out of Mueller's investigation, it is time that he writes the report, closes it out, and let the American people focus on what is important to them. Hopefully this is the beginning of the end, but it can come none too soon for most Americans.
There's an old line when I covered the Reagan White House. It's appropriate to say here, those who know aren't talking. Those who talk don't know. No, nobody outside of the special counsel's office knows what he's got. But clearly, Robert Mueller and his team know a lot more than we know. And we're going to have to wait to find out whether it is substantive or not.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Ooh. Welcome to the program. It is a fantastic day to be an American and also to be wearing a Christmas headband. Yep, it's the upside down elf legs. Yeah, you can see that if you're watching the live stream on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. You can also catch a recap of all the headbands that have been worn on the Instagram account. Welcome to the show. I'm Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And we have a great program planned for you today. First off, you heard it is Keep Christ in Christmas promo day. We're selling the wristbands. We want you to participate. We want you to jump in with us and really get excited about the prospect of not just celebrating Christmas, but making sure that everyone knows why we're celebrating Christmas. And that may seem a little like you might be sitting there thinking, well, come on, Stacey, that's silly. Everyone knows why we celebrate Christmas. Well, yes and no. If you're younger and you're unchurched and you're growing up in, this Me Too, every other kind of era, every movement except that of the church, and you haven't been really taught about the true meaning of having a couple of weeks off at the end of the year and December 25th and December 24th and everything leading up to it, not just the 12 days of Christmas, but the entirety of what we celebrate, which is that Christ was sent to take on human flesh and be born and to save us. He took all of that on because he loves us so much, and that this was God's plan for us, and that he was prophesied about many generations before, and that the prophecies were fulfilled, and that Jesus Christ is Lord. He's alive, and he's on the throne today, and we can access him. We have access to him through prayer and through reading our Bible and the Holy Spirit. It's a joyous time, and we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to kind of intersect that joyous time with our interactions with other people during the season. So at retailers, I noticed I've been out getting some stuff together because I'm having a little Christmas shindig for my girlfriends. It's just my mom friends, all my friends, and they're coming over, and we're going to be having brunch and drinking lattes and just enjoying ourselves. And I was noticing when I was out buying things for that and kind of just gathering the things that are needed, that retailers now, they're like, oh, thanks for coming in, or happy holidays. And so I almost felt like I was a rebel of some sort, but I've been saying Merry Christmas, not Merry Christmas, but Merry Christmas, like I really feel. And they've been saying, oh, thank you, Merry Christmas. So I don't think it's that employees don't want to say it. I don't think that there's any animosity towards it, at least not on a large scale, because I've yet to have anybody say, oh, no, I'm not saying that back to you. Everyone returns the greeting, but we need to do more than that. And that's what today's promotion day is about. So let me tell you first, we're going to have Kimberly Klacik, Republican strategist and political commentator, coming on the show in the second segment. We're going to listen to a little bit of audio from Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon. Don't you touch that dial. You stay right there. Don't get triggered because I said Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon. Chris Cuomo actually scolded Don Lemon for getting really petty on the show. They were talking to each other, and they were discussing the funeral of George H.W. Bush and how President Trump was received. And there was the Shade Brigade and the Petty Brigade were in full effect mode on the pew in the church. Hillary Clinton refused to acknowledge or shake the hand of the president. Now, I get it. She's still bitter, but it was poor form for her. And so they were discussing it. So we're going to listen to a little bit of that audio. We'll get to your calls as well, 866-963-2037. But right now, I want to talk about the Keep Christ in Christmas Armband Day. So, first off, we just discussed it's the true meaning of Christmas. And it's the politically correct forces that really want to kind of take this thing over and say, look, we know originally we took time off at the end of the year and let kids out of school and, everybody's got trees up, holiday trees, because of Christmas. But now we're a multicultural society and we need to be politically correct, and we need to just only pay attention to what doesn't trigger people. And that's garbage. That's garbage. It's like somebody telling you on your birthday, well, we know we're celebrating your birthday and we're here for a party for your birthday, but we're just going to call it a birthday celebration. And everyone here has had a birthday, and so everyone here has birthdays, so we're going to celebrate everyone's birthday today. No thanks. I'm not participating in that. That whitewashing, that removal of our history, that ignoring and putting God and his son's sacrifice and everything that has been given for us into a box, sealing it up and pushing it in the corner and pulling forward an upside down Christmas tree. No thanks. So what we want you to do is to buy a set of wristbands. They come in packages of 10. You can wear one for yourself and then pass the others out to friends and family so they can wear them. And they're conversation starters. And so you get 2, if you buy 2, you get a discount. So you'll get 20 wristbands, but you'll get a significant price break. And all of the shipping is already paid for. So all you have to do is order your set and you get them shipped to you for free. The deadline to order is December 17th. We want you to order today. That's what we're kind of talking about today. In between our other news and information, you can call 877-927-4917, 877-927-4917, or you can do it the easy way by ordering online. You go to afastore.net, afastore.net. You go there, you order your wristbands, and then boom, you can check that off your list for today. Done. It's Thursday, the eve to Friday, and you can get that done in just like a matter of seconds. You know me, I like trying it out to make sure that I'm not telling you that it goes super fast. And it's not, but it is. It goes super fast. I wouldn't tell you that it does if it didn't. It's so easy. It's so quick. afastore.net, afastore.net. Now, let's talk a little bit about something that has been really, it's something that's been getting on my nerves. And I keep thinking about it, and I actually discussed it a little bit in a speech I gave recently because I think it's really important that we start to hone in on the fact that our actions are connected to the actions of others, and actions that we take or do not take can really materially impact the lives of other people, even to the point that they die. And nowhere is that more obvious than in the PG&E Tower and PG&E period out in California, and what they've done or not done that contributed to the Camp Fire that killed all of those people and destroyed the town of Paradise, and ultimately has resulted in billions of dollars in property damage and loss and the upheaval and disruption of people's lives. So NBC Bay Area is now reporting that authorities are investigating the deadly Camp Fire. They've actually come up with something significant. They're tying its origin to the failure of a single steel hook that held up a high voltage line that was installed on a nearly 100-old high voltage transmission tower. So a 100-year-old high voltage transmission tower had a single steel hook, and that steel hook failed. That high voltage line fell and ignited the fire. What a travesty. So you'd probably wonder, why would they have a PG&E transmission tower that was nearly 100 years old? Why wouldn't that have been updated, replaced, or at minimum refurbished to the degree that the oldest parts would no longer be the central mechanisms, the steel hooks at a minimum? I can't answer that. Now, the fire began at the base of a transposition tower, which serves to redistribute the electricity on the system to balance the load and assure safety. The tower has 2 arms holding out the jumper, which is a part of the line that's being shifted to another point at the top of the tower. Now, the arms each hold electrical insulators, which resemble a series of white discs, and authorities believe the fire started with the fracturing of a steel hook that holds up the insulators to the arms above. It is one of those hooks that failed in high winds the morning of November 8th. PG&E failed to maintain the tower, and they have an obligation to do that, and it means they are liable for this disaster. That is a quote from attorney Dario I'm going to mess his name up, I think. Dario Di Cataldi. And he's actually suing PG&E over the Camp Fire. He says they're responsible. Now, CAL FIRE would not comment for the story, citing the ongoing investigation, and PG&E would not address the information on the apparent cause, sending instead a statement to NBC Bay Area saying, quote, "The cause of the Camp Fire is still under investigation. We will continue to focus on assessing infrastructure, safely restoring power where possible, and helping our customers to recover and rebuild." Now, that's boilerplate. That's boilerplate to any kind of inquiry into something that occurred that might possibly, the company might possibly be held liable for. And you know, what do we expect them to say? We know it's our fault. I mean, wouldn't that be refreshing? We know this is our fault. We plan to make good on it no matter what. That's the good old days. And even the good old days aren't the good old days, because human nature is that we don't want to take responsibility when something falls down and it's our fault. When something fails and it's our fault. Human nature is that we don't want to take responsibility for it. So there's another attorney named Frank Petrie who has sued over both wildfires and the San Bruno gas explosion. And he worries that the hook failure is just more evidence than PG&E is not able to deal with the risks posed by its system, which is a red flag. Parts of the system could fail due to corrosion and fatigue from decades of service. Now, again, what the point that I'm making here, because this story, I mean, it literally, who's surprised by learning this? The details, yes, they may be a bit shocking, but overall, we knew someone had to be responsible for the fire. Someone either set the fire or it was caused by accident or by neglect and failure to maintain. So now we're finding out it's neglect and failure to maintain key systems and components that, had they been maintained, would have lessened the likelihood of this fire. So now we know that this happened and that the detailed inspection should have occurred back in 2012 when 5 towers collapsed during a winter windstorm. So there was you know, a lot of times people will say, oh no, there were no warnings. This was totally unexpected. But in something like this, where you're dealing with infrastructure, known issues that it's not like PG&E just got into the electric, you know, distribution business. They have been in business for just a very, very long time, decades after decades. And there are certain things that you have to do to maintain equipment, whether it's computers, cars, what have you. You know this. They know this. Their dereliction of duty is of a scale that really we should be seeing people being hauled out of PG&E executive offices in handcuffs. Someone has to be held responsible for what's happened here. We're saying, this article is saying, and I've already said it on the air, y'all can go back and listen to the podcast, that people didn't do what they were supposed to do, either because they were influenced by lobbyists or because they just didn't want to, or because there was no impetus for them to follow through on their mandated jobs. But now we're talking about them drawing link to link to link, these attorneys. And these attorneys obviously have a motivation to see this thing through because they're expecting to be able to sue the electricity off of PG&E. They want to be able to sue them and get damages and awards for the victims who are their clients. So this lawyer, Di Cataldi, says they should have taken a serious look at the entire circuit after those 5 towers collapsed in 2012, and apparently they didn't do that, and that's a big problem for PG&E. It's a big problem for the people who were killed, who were made homeless, and who were harmed in many ways. The point I want to make is that no one's going to get away with anything. Whether or not these executives and utility line inspectors and managers who told them not to do the inspections or managers who ignored the results of the inspections, every single person will be held accountable. If not now, at the judgment seat. No one gets away. I'm not getting away. No one gets away. So, it's best to do the job that we're mandated to do. We'll see and keep up with this. We'll bring you more. Don't forget, it's Keep Christ in Christmas Armband Day, AFR.net, AFRstore.net. We'll be right back with more.
The Ministry of Preborn meets abortion-minded women right where they are. When a young mom sees her baby on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry. And it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
This mom chose life for her baby.
She's been such a joy. Her name even means rebirth and sort of being raised up from the ashes. I now see my daughter and I cannot imagine my life without my happy, lovely, joyful, smart baby, and I'm so grateful.
Preborn runs and leads Christian pregnancy centers all over the country. To find out more, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. My dear friend and mentor Robertson McQuilkin wrote an article a number of years ago entitled Living by Vows. In it, he tells a story of his wife Muriel's decline due to Alzheimer's disease. Her condition got to a point where he needed to make a decision about her care. But for him, it was simple. He tells how years ago on their wedding day, he made a vow to care for her in sickness and in health. So here he was, one of the most influential Christian leaders, president of a thriving Bible college and seminary, and he decided to resign. He stepped down as president of Columbia International University to care for his wife in the last decade of her life. He just says, you live by your commitment. You live by your vows. In our culture today, love is reduced to a bunch of feelings and emotions, and because of this, oddly enough, people are starving for intimacy. So it is in our relationship with Christ. Sometimes we reduce it to too much of a feeling. Listen to what Jesus says in John chapter 14, verse 21. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. In other words, Jesus says, you prove your love for me not by your tears, not by your feelings, Crawford. You prove your love for me by obeying me. Love and intimacy are products of commitment, obedience, and following through. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Perhaps you're feeling spiritually dry. Could it be that God is standing back because you haven't moved toward him in an act of your will and obedience? If you want to touch the heart of God, do what he says.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. It's Keep Christ in Christmas Armband Day. We want you to go to our site and participate with us by ordering a pack of armbands. You can order them at our website over at afrstore.net, afrstore.net, and that's where you can find out more, or you can call 877-927-4917, 877-927-4917, afrstore.net, where you can get your package of Keep Christ in Christmas armbands. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Kimberly Klasick. She's a Republican strategist and political commentator. Kimberly, thanks for joining the show today.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. We have so much going on. I think one of the things that has been a big, huge story that's been kind of roiling the internet is this push by a lot of different radio stations to ban Baby It's Cold Outside because they say it has a consent issue.
Yes, I've been watching that, definitely.
So I guess my question to you, Kimberly, is because you're in the millennial generation, and some of the music that is really popular right now and driven by millennial sales on iTunes and Google Play, etc., is music by Kanye West, Beyonce, Jay-Z, and in all of these songs, the sexual objectification of women and there's violence, there's a lot of really, it's difficult stuff to listen to if it's not the genre of music you're used to tuning into, is far worse than anything you hear in Baby It's Cold Outside. Why are people only paying attention to that song?
You know what? That's a great question. And the only thing I can say, I guess, to answer that is it's just good old-fashioned political correctness at this point. It reminds me of when we were trying to ban Christmas so hard. I would say probably about 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if you remember that. Nobody wanted to say Christmas tree or Merry Christmas. It's only Happy Holidays. It's like, well, political correctness seems to really hit us in the face pretty hard when it comes to the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah. And I feel like, why can't we just celebrate every one of these holidays without having to diminish another? You can love Hanukkah, you can love Christmas all at the same time. You can love these songs, and you're absolutely right. Jay-Z, there's so many songs, not even just rap songs. I've heard a lot of country songs these days that are kind of like pop country that have, some lyrics that I'm not used to hearing in the country genre, but nobody calls that out. It's about, just trying to take away, I guess, what we're used to here in America. You know what I mean?
I do. And you know what, Kimberly, you make a good point, because I said rap, but you can listen to some rock songs and heavy metal and hear some things where you're like, whoa, what did he just say? Or so it's not specific to any one genre, but I go for rap because primarily I remember when rap was much more, it was just cleaner overall. And the evolution of rap into something that's almost, it's like words that are weapons, but the weapons are most often deployed against women. And the things that are said in songs, the declarations about, sexual intimacy, etc., it all flies in the face of this, it's supposed to be this completely upstanding movement, the Me Too movement, that's seeking to stamp out issues of consent across the country, but they just, I don't know if they've never heard rap music before, or they just don't know it exists, or what. I'm just wondering when do they address that?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And what's so crazy about it is, honestly, now, I guess this song, Baby It's Cold Outside, is probably, everyone now knows exactly what it is, and they've tried to listen to the whole thing. So now I'm pretty sure it's probably one of the most popular songs out there. Because if people haven't heard it, they sure have now, because there's so much of a controversy about it. But you're right. There are so many songs that have so many other lyrics that we could say, hey, you know what? That is very disrespectful. It's degrading. But, we're going to go towards this Christmas song because we hate Christmas and it's all about political correctness. And to me, it's like, this has been going on for how many years? We'll check some songs and not the others. To me, it's just like, why? Why? At this point, if it's on the radio and this is where we are, obviously if it's getting airtime, do we say something to the radio stations? Do we say something to those that are actually playing it? Was the artist held accountable for any of their songs or lyrics? It's just like, we're just going to pull it off the airwaves now because now someone has a problem with it.
Well, and the artists in Baby It's Cold Outside, aren't they deceased? Like, we're talking about a very old song. This is not something that was just put out in the last 10 years. This is an old song. The other thing is, out of all the songs that are super popular, Baby It's Cold Outside is one of those ones where, Kimberly, you're at the Home Goods, you're at Macy's, you're at Nordstrom Rack, you're at Nordstrom, or you're wherever you are, you're shopping, and you hear Baby It's Cold Outside in the background, and it's so ubiquitous that you're not even singing it. You're not doing your shoulders like you do with the little Miley Cyrus Christmas song where you can't help but do the little dance, your shoulders go up. Nothing's happening. Baby It's Cold Outside comes on. Nothing happens in your brain. It doesn't register. You don't even realize you've heard it. I've heard it so many times out in public that I don't even, it's like background noise to me. Like if you live near an airport, you don't hear the planes anymore. It's like that. I can't find a less consequential song for people to be this upset about.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. When I first thought about it, I thought, wait a minute, Stand a Baby, I think, has a little more suggestive lyrics than Baby It's Cold Outside. But for some reason, that's the song that was chosen.
Right. Well, geez, yeah. Well, I bet you if we thought about it hard, and I admit going into this thing that I am not a hugely up-to-date popular music person. I like to I'll just hear a song that I like, and I have Shazam on my phone. I'll click the Shazam button. It finds that song for me. And so I'll hear that one song from that artist without ever checking out any of their other music. But the one song that I like, I'll just have that one on my phone, and it'll just rotate in and out until I get tired of it, and then I'll delete it off of that device, and that's it. So I may never even find out very much about an artist unless there's someone that I've heard from someone, you should listen to this person. So it's, but I'm sure even with my limited exposure, you and I could sit here if we wanted to and we could come up with a top 10 list of songs that are rankly offensive and disgusting and should never have been made into music, that insult and degrade women in ways that really, it's almost, sometimes I listen to some of the music from right when I kind of said, you know what, that's it for me. I'm going to just stop tuning into these stations. I promise you, Kimberly, I was shocked at how people, the human ability to manipulate words into disgusting terms to degrade women, it's like its own PhD art form. It's unbelievable the way people can come up with stuff to say that's negative about women.
Yeah, yep. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's crazy, from our bodies to, and a lot of times our hair, the way we wear it, it's, the clothes that we wear. It's like you can name anything and they can rhyme it with anything.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, my gosh, how did they even come up with this? But they can, and, and that's what sells. Even when you look at the music videos, it's just like, that is what sells. And I know I'm guilty of it, too, when I'm on social media. I know which picture is going to get more likes and more hits and more followers. You just know, because that's just how we are today in America. So to go back in time is to pick out Baby It's Cold Outside. Somebody must just have an axe to grind because it makes absolutely no sense. And it's almost like banning speech, It's like, here we've got the freedom of speech thing going, and, we can say this and do what we want and protest this, protest that, but we cannot listen to Baby It's Cold Outside in public.
So, yeah, I think it's kind of crazy. But I knew you would have interesting perspective on that. And now so Kimberly, I know you've probably already discussed this so many times on Fox and everything, but I need your input here. Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo were on TV discussing the fact that, Hillary Clinton was the queen of petty nation at the funeral yesterday and wouldn't acknowledge President Trump, who honestly, I know he was probably like, really, really, chick, you lost, so you don't acknowledge me then. And you know how he is. He probably had tweets forming in his mind, but he didn't because he was at a funeral. But she was the queen of petty nation, and Don Lemon actually had one of his camera people come on to the scene so he could demonstrate how he would have kept his hands down and just given him a curt nod and then turned, to try to rebuff him. And Chris Cuomo actually said, you know what, dude, you're a petty and small individual, which I'm surprised by that because, Chris Cuomo's not exactly my favorite person. So what do you make of this need for Hillary Clinton to try to put Donald Trump down when she's been talking about him nonstop since she lost? Like, she says his name every day. And I don't get why she couldn't just shake his hand.
Right. No, it doesn't make any sense. And, I sent a tweet out saying, thank you, Michelle Obama and Melania Trump, for keeping it classy. It didn't make any sense. But to me, this is a way for her to stay relevant. The more she talks down about Trump, the more that she ignores him publicly, she's still in the light. And so to me, it was really selfish because here you are at the funeral, right? President George Bush, and you feel the need to have the cameras on you by not shaking his hand or not even just acknowledging his presence. I mean, to me, she's just so selfish and self-centered. And this is why I'm glad that she did not win. Because this just shows to me just who she really is. I know she says a lot of times that she thinks President Trump is a narcissist, but I think she has those traits within herself.
She does. She does, because well, first of all, I always say, the Democrats project their true intentions, their activities, their actions onto other people. And so when she says he's a narcissist, we all know how much she thinks and discusses herself. She thinks she was actually born to be president of the United States. If that's not narcissism, I've never, it's okay to say stuff like that if you've already won.
Right.
Then you can get away with it because people are like, oh, well, you are the president. But if you've yet to win, but you still think you were born to do it, all of us are kind of like, we don't see it. I don't see the born part of it. So she's got this whole thing about her that she's got to talk about Donald Trump and people who voted for him, strangers that she's never met, like me. She's got to talk about us and say things about us that are utterly insulting and ludicrous all the time. And she loves doing it in foreign countries like India and England and places like that. But at this funeral, where honestly, it was really an honor for her to be invited. If you think about the way the Clintons have gone after the Bush family and anyone who ever worked for them, The Bush family could have been petty and said, we'll have the Trumps because he's the president. We'll have the Obamas because they were the president before. And if Carter can make it, we'll have him as well. But we ain't having no Clintons. They could have said that.
Right.
And nobody would have said a thing. Now, liberals would have had something to say. But most Americans would have been like, well, there is bad blood there. I mean, those families are at each other's throats. But instead, they said, everyone come. And then they seated them in their order of being the president. So it was literally a chance for Americans to feast our eyes upon all of our leadership for decades and realize that one family's missing from the lineup. Obviously, George Bush, the son and his wife weren't sitting in the pew. And then, of course, George Herbert Walker Bush, who the funeral is for, they're not in the pew. It was a beautiful demonstration of the longevity of the American presidency and how long our presidents actually live. They don't die in their 50s. They're not physically unhealthy. There's a lot of lessons to be seen in watching those people sitting on that pew. And she had to just try to jack it up.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And this is what's so crazy about it. It's like you said, they were at odds, the Bushes and the Clintons, forever. And so for me, and then you saw when Bush Jr. came in, he shook everyone's hand, he gave Michelle a mint, for their ongoing joke. And here's the time for her to show that we can all be sitting here in unity, right? But no, she has to be divisive. She has to be the center of attention. She could have shown everybody across the world, not even just the country, across the world, how we can all come together, especially at a time at a funeral, and shake hands and be cordial and, remember such a leader. But she couldn't do it. She couldn't get past herself and her selfish need to just be the center of attention. And for her to be like, oh, I don't like Trump, I'm not going to acknowledge him. I mean, this is, to me, it seals the deal. Like you said, what she calls everybody, I mean, she still has never apologized for calling Trump supporters deplorable.
She said she regretted it because apparently it hurt her election, but she didn't say she was sorry.
Right. She never said, I'm sorry I told you that.
Right. I'm
because
sorry.
You're not that.
I'm sorry that you're deplorable. I mean, I'm sorry I said you were deplorable. Nothing. We've got nothing. Not even the fake apology.
No.
So
No, not at all.
I also, you mentioned the ongoing joke between George Bush and his, and Mrs. Obama. And so it was totally unexpected. You could tell she was not expecting him to carry on the joke. But when she got the mint in her hand, she looked down and then she looked up at him like, oh, we're still doing this. And then he went on to shake the next hand. And I thought to myself, I like that they have their own little joke going on. I actually think that's super cool. Like that is something that, you want to keep your sense of humor. I am as hard on the right as you can possibly get, but I also have a sense of humor. And if there's a way to, lighten the load, ease the tension, to laugh for a quick second, because we are still all human beings, I'm all for it. I wish that Melania Trump or any one of the others, any one of them had, like Bill Clinton, if he had handed a mint to George after he handed the mint to Mrs. Obama. You see? So he would have gotten a mint back, but not from the same person he gave it to. And then the joke would have really been, extended, if you will.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we'll see something like that the next time they're all together. Although this was such a sad occasion, I'm hoping we don't have to go through this again anytime soon. Kimberly, I love it when you come on the show. Thank you for bringing us some levity and great analysis today. Kimberly Klasick, Republican strategist. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
All right. Talk to you again soon. All right. We will be back with more. Don't forget, Keep Christ in Wristbands Day is here. It's afastore.net, afastore.net to get yours. We'll be back with more right after this. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. A Republican from Oklahoma has a plan to fund completion of the wall at our southern border. Senator Jim Inhofe's solution is simple: reduce illegal immigrants' access to federal welfare and use those savings to fund the wall. Here are the specifics. The WALL Act would require each person seeking to collect a child tax credit to have a work-authorized Social Security number instead of just the child. It would also require that E-Verify be used to prove citizenship. The minimum fine levied against illegal border crossers would be increased. With open borders Democrats poised to take over the House in January, Inhofe's plan should be implemented during the lame duck session. It's no secret that America is a great place to live. Congress should act quickly to end the attraction of taxpayer-funded easy living for illegal immigrants. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Pastor Joseph Parker.
You know, obviously when things are going well, it's much easier to have an attitude of thanksgiving and praise to the Lord. But even when things are going difficult, it's important to know, too, there's never a time that's inappropriate for us to thank and praise God. Now, some may ask, well, what about when you're going through difficult times, when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death? We can have two different responses. We can worship or we can whine.
Tune in to the Hour of Intercession, weekday afternoons at 1 Central on Urban Family Talk.
What you get for your money.
Getting something for nothing sounds good, but it rarely happens. Consider all those 0% interest offers on credit cards or a new car. Buyer beware, what you get for your money may not be such a good deal at all. Let's look at 0% financing. The website beatthecarsalesman.com says it's just a hook to get customers to bite. Those deals can come with a number of pitfalls, including the possibility of an inflated price point before you even get to financing, or credit card terms that force you to pay off a purchase in months, or else the interest balloons astronomically. Also, financing at 0% interest is usually reserved for drivers with a sterling credit score. And think about this, many customers find out they don't qualify after they're already in the dealership, at the table, and in love with that new car smell. And for those who do qualify, a 0% interest car loan is in many cases for a shorter term, like 36 months instead of 60 months, meaning you could wind up paying more per month for the same car than you would by stretching out the payments over 5 years or more. But for those who find 0% interest works for them, it can work well. Just read the fine print. That's what you get for your money. I'm Derek Dennis, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacey on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I want to say that I don't think I would shake hands with him. I don't know. I would just, nope, couldn't do it. I'm not that big a person. I would hope that I would be, but I don't, I can't fake the funk, as they say. I'm not saying the Obamas did that, but there they go, right there.
Oh, I don't think it's about faking the funk. I think it's about showing respect for something bigger than them.
Why would they do it when he doesn't? But I understand what you're saying.
On. That's not the measure.
No, that's not. But they show. What are you talking about, Chris? They showed respect for the office.
Yes.
The way they conducted themselves in office. No scandal. There was no trash. There was no affair. There was
Amen.
They showed the ultimate respect for the office. They do not have to show respect for someone who does not respect them. Someone who tweets out pictures of them behind bars of the president's. You don't have to show respect for that kind of person. Here, let me show you what I would have done.
You don't have to.
Well, let me show you. I want to show you something. Let me show you what I would have done. Okay, come here. Come here, Dom. Come here, Dom.
Poor Don. You're petty and small.
I'm not petty and small. That's real, brother. That's real. And
real
it
petty
shows
and
you
small.
this is.
So Cuomo says it's real petty and small. Now I'm gonna point out a couple things here. First of all, are you telling me that Hillary Clinton hasn't said negative things about Donald Trump? Oh, she has. Not just Donald Trump, but his supporters as well. So if they're going to be petty about who's done what, then nobody's shaking anybody's hand, because in the world of politics, when they start jousting, it's not jousting with marshmallows on tiny twigs that you found out in your side yard. It's true political warfare that they've been engaging in. They were fighting over the right to determine the direction of this country for 4 years. And I just don't know what world Don Lemon lives in which there were no scandals during the Obama administration. Did not the Obama IRS target Americans based on their political ideology for basically saying you can't run a not-for-profit and have status you got to pay for all this stuff out of your own pocket. You can't raise money because you're going to do Tea Party stuff because you believe in the Constitution. What about the gun running scandal? Eric Holder sent guns down south of the border, and we had Agent Terry killed. I think Agent Terry's family would say there was a scandal. What about the 4 people who were killed in Benghazi? That's a bit of a scandal. I mean, I could go on. What about all the money that was wasted on the green energy boondoggle that Michelle Malkin, I think she's written 3 books about it. 3 books worth of scandal from the Obama administration on how they gave tax money to companies that literally got the money and within 6 months were shuttered. They were supposed to be doing green energy, but instead of doing green energy, they just took the money and ran. No scandals? Maybe in Don Lemon's world, but out here in real world, in Realityville, there were scandals. Yeah, Barack Obama didn't have any affairs. We give him kudos for that. A lot of presidents have had a problem in that area. But scandal-free? Nah. He was not even close to being scandal-free. Not even close. He wasn't even not close. He was not even close. Doubly not close, like far away, like orders of magnitude away from not close. He was, another galaxy apart from not close to not having any scandals, okay? Let's go to the phones. We have Mary in Kansas. Mary, thank you for calling in today.
Hi, Stacey. I have a comment, then a question. On the Keep Christ and Christmas, I had already decided last year we do a cake or something every year celebrating Jesus' birth because my grandson asked me to. And so this year we were putting down Keep Christ in. Then we make a cross with the Christmas going down and Christ going across. So we're doing it in 27 cupcakes. But at the end of the T, we put the crown or our Lord. And so people can do that, and the kids really and people really get a kick out of seeing that, celebrating the birth of Christ. But my question is, I can't see to watch TV. When Hillary refused to shake hands with President Trump, did Bill Clinton or Obama, any of them shake hands with President Trump? I was just curious.
Yeah, they did. They did. The others shook hands, and it wasn't a long embrace or anything, but Barack Obama shook his hand, but the look on his face was like, I could fall through the floor right now, but he shook the president's hand. He did. So did Michelle Obama.
Well, that's good. That's good. I was just wondering that. And thank you, and keep Christ and Christmas, and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mary. And cool idea about the cupcakes. That sounds like a lot of fun. And if you're visualizing it, she's got the cupcakes, and they're in the shape of a cross, and that is wonderful for demonstrating to the kids what the reason for the season and all of that. And I love that. I love it when I get to hear about people who have grandkids doing stuff for their grandkids. I have a really soft place in my, I'm so obsessed with it. So all my friends who have grandkids, most of them are not local to the area, but a couple of them have grandkids, but most of my friends who have grandkids live elsewhere, like in Texas and places like that. And so I see on their Instagram account where they're doing stuff with their grandkids. I'm like, ooh. Now I do have one girlfriend who I get to see tomorrow who has grandkids, and I follow her grandkids' exploits on Facebook. So, but yeah, I love hearing about what people are doing with the grandkids and trying to help them kind of keep up with what is going on around them and to teach them and make these new traditions because it's special. I remember doing stuff with my grandma when we would come back from Germany to the United States, and she would have special stuff she'd do with us in the summer to celebrate us being there. And any other time we came to visit, she would always try to do something with us, me and my sister, because we would live the furthest away and we were the least likely to actually be in Tennessee at the time. So, yeah, it's exciting. So now I want to turn over to something, and you've got to be thinking to yourself, why is there so much discussion about these presidential candidates? Well, you don't want to talk about President Trump's accomplishments, and there's only so much bashing they can do. And so there's a lot of discussion about the presidential candidates, and the Democrats' field is extremely full. I mean, to the point of crazy town. It's full. And so what they're doing is you have a lot of people who are kind of going about the machinations. I believe Elizabeth Warren already knows she's running. Why else would she do that whole stunt? Speaking of the stunt that she pulled with the DNA test, she has really offended a lot of people with that. And I know, look, I thought it was hilarious and silly and idiotic all at the same time. But for people who consider her a serious presidential contender, it was just like her pouring, saying, I'm going to take a whole bunch of good, clean American dollars and put them in a pile, a fire pit or something, and throw gasoline on and set them ablaze, because it really damaged her standing with the Indian tribes. And she's from a state where there are considerable votes in the Indian tribes. And, well, support anyway. There's considerable support there. And so in light of that, she really shot herself in the foot with the DNA test, because a lot of people feel like that whole DNA testing thing, it harkens back to a time when it was like one drop and you're black, one drop and you're this and you're that. It harkens back to a more negative time. And for people who aren't obsessed with race, it's kind of like it gives Elizabeth Warren's opponents an opportunity to poke her again on an issue that shouldn't be an issue. She should stop talking about being descended from American Indians. Just stop it, because it doesn't help her at all. So some of her advisors, on condition of anonymity, and this is reported by Alex Griswold over at the Washington Free Beacon, are talking about, her making a full apology for doing the DNA test in the first place. So remember, back in October, she releases this DNA test showing that she had Native American ancestry dating back to somewhere between 6 and 10 generations, but she hailed the results as a win. She was attacked not just by conservatives who mocked it, but by Native American groups that have historically opposed the use of DNA to prove ancestry. They use family records, your mom, the mom's mom, etc., the father. You have to have some tangible human connection to a tribe in order to claim membership. They trust that more than they trust DNA. Now, I'm not calling into question the validity of DNA, but I am saying it is utterly ridiculous not to honor the traditions of these tribes. The tribes have a way of claiming their own people, or for a person to say, I'm one of you. And she just totally flouted that, even after she'd been told. She says that it created a mockery, and that it saddened her supporters. And the New York Times is reporting that some of her supporters and even staffers have privately expressed concern that she may have damaged her relationships with Native American groups and her own standing with progressive activists, particularly those that are racial minorities. Trouble in the camp. I don't mind it, because I don't think she should run for the presidency. But this doesn't bode well for her, because, and in my opinion, these kind of missteps made in the lead up to an announcement that she's going to run, she'll be making these kinds of mistakes after she's announced she's going to run. And people who are thinking about bankrolling her campaign should consider that. She's not the one. It's not her day. But, that's my opinion. All right, let's go back to the phones. We have Jake in Arkansas. Thanks for calling in today.
Yes, ma'am. I got 3 things right quick. I won't hold you long.
Sure.
We just have to look over Hillary, because she'll never grow up. And another thing, that I used to be a Democrat until my kids got out of college, and they convinced me and showed me that I was wrong, and I switched over to the Republican. And why come I never hear anybody talk about all the money that Obama gave to the Muslim hood?
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Brotherhood.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. No one ever talks about that. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Jake, for calling in. That, and also remember when he put $1.7 billion in cash on a pallet? He had to put some of it in American dollars and some of it in Swiss francs, and then they shipped that by military plane to another country to have the money converted so that it could be taken to Iran. Do you remember that? I mean, honestly, I'm sure somewhere on the repository of knowledge known as the internet, there is a list of all of the Obama administration scandals that we could go to. And Jake is right. We don't even talk. There were so many. We don't even talk about them all. And that also goes to what I've been saying to people who've been saying, well, I get accused a lot on social media and privately in email of having an obsession with Obama. You should let it go, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't have an obsession with President Obama. And I didn't hate him at any point that he was the president. I don't hate him now. I don't have an obsession with him. But I do think he was given the total, kid glove treatment. And he's a grown man with a fantastic education that he doesn't want us to know much about because he sealed all the records. And he was the president of the United States. And so if he didn't have big boy pants enough to be able to handle criticism, then why in the world was he the president? That's my thing, you know. So, yeah, that's how I feel about that. Now, there are other things that we could be talking about, and we'll get to criticism of migration actually could become a criminal offense. And this is under the UN Global Pact. It's a proposal known as the United Nations Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. First of all, regular migration? So that means everybody from every other country will be coming to all of the good countries regularly? Somebody ought to have a word with these people at the UN. I don't understand how they get to stay there. Why do they get to stay there and maintain these jobs when they have this silliness that they keep proposing? It says here, there are 23 objectives within this, UN Global Compact for managing migration in a better fashion at all levels. It is slated to be adopted in an intergovernmental conference on December 10th and 11th in Marrakesh, Morocco. And initially, all 193 UN member nations, except for the United States, backed it. Now, you got to be kidding me. You're telling me that the European countries that are currently experiencing all of this crazy migration, they back this garbage? You're telling me that Russia and China back this garbage only because it threatens American national sovereignty? It threatens the European sovereignty. They only support it because it gives them an opportunity to see countries that they normally can't come up against be weakened. So now some countries have reversed course and are echoing America's concerns about it. The document represents an intergovernmentally negotiated agreement prepared under the auspices of the United Nations, boo, that covers all dimensions of international migration in a holistic and comprehensive manner. It's the first ever such agreement and was conceived after the biggest influx of migrants to Europe since World War II. Now, the agreement, if ratified, would actually threaten national sovereignty. This is the whole, why do we have the UN besides peacekeeping? Because they want to be sovereign over all of our countries instead of us having our own way. It criminalizes anti-migration speech, thwarts freedom of the press because you can't report on the migration, and maybe even establishes a problematic legal framework. In other words, do you have your own legal system in your country? Well, of course you do, but that's not going to be good enough for us. When it has to do with migrants, you have to use our system, which basically means migrants win, you lose, stop talking. Among other things, governments are asked to promote independent, objective, and quality reporting, stop allocation of public funding for material that supports media outlets that systematically promote intolerance, xenophobia, racism, or other forms of discrimination towards migrants. Yeah. No thanks. I'm glad we have Donald Trump because Hillary would be all over that. She would love to sign something like that, which is why she's not the president. Yes. Another day without Hillary. Isn't it great? All right. That's the music. We have more for you, but you also have news and information coming up from onenewsnow.com. So stay right there.
Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is that alternative radio network because we choose to infuse Jesus in everything we do.
We count it a blessing to be able to speak with integrity and to speak honestly on the issues.
Thank you for joining us, partnering with us, being a part of
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk, so that we can stand for the gospel.
Truth. Wisdom. Empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. A special funeral train carrying the casket of President George H.W. Bush is on its way to College Station, Texas, where he will be buried during a private service in the family plot on the grounds of Bush's presidential library. The number 4141 train that left the Houston suburb of Spring this afternoon was painted to resemble Air Force One. It was 1 year ago today that President Trump delivered on a campaign promise and announced the U.S. would move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The embassy opened in May of this year. Speaking on AFR's Today's Issues program, Jan Markell of Olive Tree Ministries said this is indicative of a really special relationship between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
They've had it for a long time, and this isn't just a blessing for the move of the embassy and all. This promises a blessing to America based on Genesis 12:3. God blesses those who bless Israel, and that applies to an individual, a ministry, a business, a country, a government. It's just a biblical promise that he will bless those who bless his land and his people. It's a great day.
Markell went on to point out that 2 years ago this month, the Obama administration, quote, totally betrayed Israel at the United Nations. The Obama administration abstained on a controversial UN Security Council resolution demanding an end to Israeli settlements on Palestinian territory. That move by the Obama administration allowed the resolution to pass easily. A Honduran woman who crossed into the U.S. illegally after traveling with a migrant caravan through Mexico has given birth in the U.S. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal reports.
19-year-old Mary Yuri Serrano Hernandez traveled with her husband as part of the caravan from Honduras through Mexico with her 2-year-old while 8 months pregnant. She told Univision that she was worried, though, about conditions in Tijuana, so they crossed into the U.S. near Imperial Beach, and that's where Border Patrol agents took them into custody. She said she started experiencing abdominal pains and was taken to a hospital where she gave birth this week, making her newborn a U.S. citizen. The family was released to a family in San Diego who took them in. They say they hope to end up with other family in Ohio while they wait for the outcome of their asylum case. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Michigan is considering banning a potentially dangerous method of providing abortions. Charlie Butts has details.
In 2012, Governor Rick Snyder signed a bill banning webcam or telemed abortions. But there was a sunset provision. It expires at the end of this year, so lawmakers are working on a new bill to ban it permanently. Genevieve Marnin of Right to Life of Michigan tells AFN webcam abortions separate the mother from the abortionist.
In the case of a webcam or telemedicine abortion, the woman could be in a rural part of Michigan, and the doctor could be hundreds or even thousands of miles away in another state or even another country. So if she were to have a complication or need follow-up care, she's really left vulnerable.
So if the complication is serious, she goes to the closest emergency room where doctors are not necessarily familiar with the complication or how to do a surgical abortion if the abortion is not complete.
Which, as we know, 2 to 7% of the time, the abortion pill doesn't work, and the woman is left with a need to follow up for a surgical abortion, in which case she'd have to go to an abortion provider.
That's not always easy to do if the patient is in a rural situation. The bill is passed in the Senate, and the Michigan House is expected to consider it soon. Even the U.S. Food and Drug Administration recommends against webcam abortions. I'm Charlie Butts.
And Wisconsin Republican Governor Scott Walker is weighing whether to sign into law a sweeping package of bills passed in a lame duck session that would weaken the powers of Walker's Democratic successor. Walker's spokesman Tom Evanson said today that the governor was reviewing the bills that passed early Wednesday morning after overnight sessions in the state Senate and state Assembly. Evanson did not give a time frame for when Governor Walker would act. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
It's time to call your senators. We need to tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Senators respond to constituent calls. So call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If this is the best we've got coming out of Mueller's investigation, it is time that he writes the report, closes it out, and let the American people focus on what is important to them. Hopefully this is the beginning of the end, but it can come none too soon for most Americans.
There's an old line when I covered the Reagan White House. It's appropriate to say here, those who know aren't talking. Those who talk don't know. Nobody outside of the special counsel's office knows what he's got. But clearly, Robert Mueller and his team know a lot more than we know. And we're going to have to wait to find out whether it is substantive or not.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the program. During last hour, we talked a lot about, in the first segment, our promotion day today, which is ongoing. We want you to go to afastore.net and get your Keep Christ in Christmas wristbands. You can get a pack of 10. You can get a nice discount if you buy 2 packs and spread them far and wide. Share them with friends and neighbors, coworkers, people at church, anyone who might be interested in wearing them as a conversation starter to give us the opportunity to share the gospel and to share the reason for the season. And I also talked a little bit about the new reporting out from the Washington Free Beacon about the responsibility that PG&E holds in refusing to have proper oversight and maintenance over their infrastructure, which is responsible for the campfire. Not my opinion. It's what they've written here. NBC Bay Area, hardly a conservative organization, reporting Jackson Van Der Beken, he's the author of the piece, talking about how PG&E failed to maintain the tower, having an obligation to do so, and that they should have done detailed inspections after 2012 when 5 towers collapsed during a winter windstorm. They should have taken a serious look at the entire circuit. After those 5 towers collapsed in 2012, it appears they didn't do that, which is a big problem for PG&E and a huge problem for the people who were killed and those who were made homeless and those who were harmed in many different ways. And so, again, it's important that we do our jobs, because when we don't do our jobs, people lose their lives, they lose their property, their homes, their businesses, their livelihood, and someone has to be held accountable. Someone will be held accountable. Those responsible will ultimately be held accountable. But while we're still here on this earth and have breath, we should be very diligent in doing our own jobs, and we should hold those who don't do their jobs accountable. And that's what that article is about over at the NBC Bay Area website. The title of it is Hook on PG&E Tower Ida's Cause of Deadly Campfire. So, don't hate the player, hate the game. PG&E is the one that emails and calls and upset conversation should be going to. So this hour we're going to be speaking with Mark Lauder. He's a former special assistant to the president and press secretary to Vice President Pence. And he currently runs a strategy firm, and he's going to come on and talk about 2020 and news of the day. Apparently, the same kind of lack of winning operation and readiness and efficiency on voter information that existed in the 2012 campaign for the Republicans and Mitt Romney, that same type of malaise is now infected the Democrats' apparatus and the DNC under Tom Perez. And so Mark's going to join onto the program and talk about that a little bit and kind of paint a picture of what that looks like, because they have a lot of dissension in the ranks, because there's no real clear leader besides Tom Perez. Obviously, he's heading up the DNC, but party-wide, there's no standard bearer or individual who is a presumptive nominee who can begin to coalesce support from the many different factions and get them on board with sharing the information and data that they need to create their voter database. So he'll be joining us to talk about that. Right now, I want to turn to Bloomberg, another potential Democratic candidate for president in 2020. And he is someone who Midwestern Americans and mainstream Americans who aren't really concerned with climate agenda and all of that nonsense have found him to be really anti-Midwestern values, anti the kind of bedrock energy production methodologies. He's against them all because he's really big into climate change. So Bloomberg, according to this NBC News affiliate, where Dave Winters and Dan Price were having a discussion on air about Bloomberg coming to town in Iowa, they're saying he might have a tough time winning over some Iowans because of his previous stances and public statements on ethanol. It's number 4.
Michael Bloomberg might have a tough time winning over some Iowans. He has been a longtime critic of corn-based ethanol and the federal subsidies that help ethanol production. Back in 2007, he told MSNBC, quote, "Unless what you're trying to do is to help the people in Iowa, and I don't, that may very well be a good idea. But you can't do it as part of the environmental part of policy." Political director Dave Price joins us live from Ankeny now, where Bloomberg held an event today. Dave, those past comments could be quite the hill for him to overcome if he's going to run for president someday.
Yeah, no doubt it could be a challenge for him, and he'll have some explaining to do about it. We're not used to presidential candidates coming here and ripping ethanol, and he didn't come here and really do that today. Most of his visit was set up to come to these classrooms like this to talk more about wind, but here is how he addressed some of that previous criticism about ethanol.
I think that ethanol and biofuels are part of the mix. There's a place for it. I think eventually you'd like to get to a world where we don't burn anything. That's the ways that you really clean the air the most.
The way to clean the air the most is to have more trees and green vegetation, not burning anything. So only someone who lives in a world like Bloomberg does only someone like that can make these kind of idiotic statements. Oh, we need a world where you don't have to burn anything. That's how we get the cleanest air. But if we're not burning anything and we're going back to the dark ages, but like literally the dark ages because we can't burn anything, what about the other countries? What does Bloomberg plan to do about other countries that have their population dwarfs ours? We're a minuscule blip on the population scale or ladder or whatever, compared to these other countries where they're not only burning things, they're destroying huge forested areas. That is a contributing factor to warming. Not man-made climate change, cyclical warming, but of course the amount of vegetation that's on the earth impacts the temperature. It impacts the amount of CO2 that is absorbed and converted into oxygen for us to breathe. These kinds of simple, rudimentary, scientific these are truths, seem to have escaped this wealthy man. He's just running around making any kind of statement he wants to. And honestly, I hope he continues. I hope he just keeps on going, because it's these kinds of statements that will lock him out of huge voter markets like Iowa. You need to win Iowa. He won't be able to do it because he's against something that they use and produce. It's integral to their economy. So good. Keep talking, Bloomberg. We don't want you to be the president of the United States. If he continues on like this, there's very little chance that can actually happen. So now let's turn to yet another presidential contender, Kamala Harris, the problem with Kamala Harris is her likability. Everything's fine until you watch videos of her on the Judiciary Committee, her questioning of almost every person that it doesn't matter if they're up for a cabinet position or if they're a Supreme Court nominee. It doesn't matter if they're going to be a government dog catcher, if they've ever sat before her and had to put up with her. It's hostile witness questioning. You hear her voice doing that and you think this woman would be the president of the United States. Every event you'd have to hear her talk. You'd have to hear her talking in that voice. Not only is she smug, but everything to her is racism and sexism. There are no other reasons for any other thing to happen on this planet. If someone's doing something, they're doing it because they're a racist or they're doing it because they're a sexist. That's it. They hate women or they hate blacks. That's it. It's ridiculous. So you're probably going to be surprised to hear that someone like that, who's so in tune with the Me Too movement and so quick to make sure that she's on the right side of everything having to do with women, that she actually has a longtime aide of hers resigning from her office after settling a sexual harassment lawsuit. So this longtime aide to Senator Kamala Harris resigned from her office on Wednesday after inquiries were made about a harassment and retaliation lawsuit he settled while working for Harris when she was California's Attorney General. Harris's office claimed it was unaware, of a lawsuit filed in December of 2016 by Danielle Hartley against Larry Wallace. At the time, he was the director of California Justice Department's Law Enforcement Division under Harris. Harris had just been elected to the U.S. Senate. She was preparing to transition to Washington. And during this time, he was accused of sexual harassment. Now, Lily Adams is a spokeswoman, and she wrote in an email to the Sacramento Bee that Mr. Wallace offered his resignation to the senator, and she accepted it because he followed her on from the AG's office in California to her Senate offices in D.C. The lawsuit was actually settled in May of 2017. Notice I didn't say May of 2007 or, some other derivative thereof. Make up any number you want. This is 2017, so a year and 6 months ago, roughly, he settled a lawsuit that accused him of retaliating and sexually harassing a woman. Retaliating against. The lawsuit was settled for the whopping sum of $400,000. The department at that time was headed up by Xavier Becerra, who was appointed state attorney general after Harris went to the Senate. By this time, Wallace was working as a senior advisor in Harris's Sacramento Senate office. Then Hartley, so going backwards, Hartley joined Wallace's office in 2011 and became his executive assistant, and she accused him over a period of demeaning and harassing behavior related to her gender. According to the lawsuit, Wallace placed his printer on the floor underneath his desk and ordered Hartley to replace the paper or ink on a daily basis. When she asked to move the printer to another location so she would not have to crawl under his desk in dresses and skirts, he refused. He frequently asked her to put paper in the printer while he was sitting at his desk or in front of other male executives from the division. Now here's a bit of advice from me to you. Don't do that. If your boss puts a printer under his desk and makes you crawl under it, tender your resignation. Get your cell phone out, take some photographs, get some audio of him doing that if you're in a single-party consent state, and then submit your resignation. Why would you go underneath a desk to replace printer ink in front of other people? Like, why? So obviously he was in the wrong because he settled the lawsuit. He didn't want this coming out into the public, but it's out in the public anyway. Hartley also complained in the lawsuit that Wallace took away her meaningful tasks and put her in charge of running personal errands instead, like booking flights for Wallace's children, washing his car, taking his car to get the oil changed. She would return from these assignments, the lawsuit states, coworkers would make hostile comments to her, saying, "Are you walking the walk of shame?" According to the lawsuit, Hartley eventually informed her supervisor, Shannon Patterson, of the harassment and asked for help. Hartley observed Patterson enter Wallace's office, meet with him behind closed doors, and after that, office workers began to retaliate against her. In settling the lawsuit, the department denied Hartley's claims, and Becerra said he and two of his deputies took reasonable steps to prevent and correct workplace harassment, and they properly trained Hartley in how to respond to harassment. She unreasonably failed to utilize the procedures during the period of time, and after the alleged harassment and discrimination was occurring, had plaintiff taken reasonable effort to utilize these procedures, her alleged harm, injury, or damages would have been avoided. Classic victim blaming. So the issue here, number one, is, there's no excuse, woman, man, whatever. If you're told to do something as demeaning as crawl around on your hands and knees on the floor at work, you say no and you quit. That's it. You don't hang around. Well, this is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to demean yourself and maybe get a settlement later, or maybe not. Maybe have your name dragged through the mud. Maybe be treated like a piece of trash for weeks on weeks, year over year, by a monster. This man was a monster. And he worked in Kamala Harris's office, and she knew it. You don't work with somebody like that and not know that's who they are. But she wants to be the president of the United States, y'all. Wow. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Mark Lauder and more Stacey on the Right. Go to afrstore.net to get your Keep Christ in Christmas wristbands. Be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, Stephen McDowell has been a personal friend of mine for a couple of decades now. He is one of the best historians I know. He is president of the Providence Foundation, and no one documents early American history, especially the Christian aspect of early American history, better than my friend Stephen McDowell. He is going with us on our spiritual heritage tours, and he'll be talking all along the way and answering questions, and you're going to enjoy spending time with him if you're able to go with us in June or September. Again, we're going to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon, and we're also going on a separate trip to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. So if you'd like to go on either one of these or both of them, contact us at spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
When Congress reconvenes, we'll be hearing more about a new initiative called the Green New Deal. Proponents want to overhaul government spending in order to combat climate change. Some of the new Democrat members of Congress want the majority to establish a committee that will be tasked with increasing the size of government and decreasing carbon emissions. In a recent column, Timothy Meads quotes from an article that appeared in Politico. The Green New Deal resolution calls for a bevy of far-reaching liberal goals to decarbonize the economy within a decade by reshaping the electric power, agricultural, and transportation sector. The article goes on to acknowledge that the plan may be even too much for Democrats in the House and Senate. Nevertheless, the concept has become an important rallying cry for the need to address climate change. If all this sounds familiar, it should be. Back in 2009, President Obama's Reinvestment Act pushed billions of taxpayer dollars towards green companies tasked with a similar mandate. These companies often failed while their leaders pocketed the cash instead of creating jobs and lasting green energy. A similar plan has been tried in other countries. Tim Worstall, writing in the Washington Examiner, provides some perspective on what happened in Australia and the United Kingdom. When the global recession hit Australia, government leaders thought that they could prime the economic pump by spending money to insulate houses and other structures. A royal commission documented that financial failure. The British government decided to do the same thing. There are fears that as many as 1 million homes were ruined by this central planning. The Green New Deal would not be a deal at all. We have seen what happened in Australia, Britain, and the United States when a similar plan was implemented and failed miserably. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here. Go over to AFR.net, urbanfamilytalk.com, and stacyontheright.com. Also find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We have all these fun places for you to interact. Thank you so much for being with us. It's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. We have Mark Lotter. He is a former special assistant to the president and press secretary to the vice president. He served as special assistant to the president and press secretary to Vice President Pence. He serves as a national spokesperson for President Donald J. Trump and Vice President Mike Pence's political efforts. He can often be seen as a guest on Fox News Channel, MSNBC, CNN, and the major television networks. He is also the founder of Lotter Communications, LLC, which provides communications consulting services to corporations and organizations. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me back, Stacey.
It's good to talk to you. You know what? Let's dig into this thing. I kind of previewed it just a smidge a little bit ago. You've got the Democrats in a similar position to what Mitt Romney found himself in when he was the presumptive nominee, if you will, going into the 2012 elections, where the Republicans' data apparatus was just not stood up properly. Now the Democrats find themselves in a similar position. What do you see them doing about it?
Well, there's a lot of flailing around right now because not only are they not improving it, we've got to remember that the DNC is still pretty much bankrupt financially and obviously from a leadership standpoint. They still have loans outstanding from the 2016 campaign, let alone whatever they might have done on 2020. They got out fundraised by the Republican National Committee, I think 40-1 at one point. And so the Republican National Committee is continuing to invest resources to build on that great data framework that we've already established. And Democrats are still languishing behind trying to catch up. And their state parties are really not having much love for the plan that's been put forth so far.
So I want to kind of talk a little bit about Tom Perez, and he's really unpopular. And I know, like, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was never my favorite, but apparently she had inroads and a lot of connections and kind of a network around the country of people who supported her and were really responsive to her leadership. Tom Perez seems to lack that. Am I wrong about that? Or is it because it looks like he just doesn't have a really good network of supporters around the country?
No, I mean, it would look like, that they are still continuing to lack in strong leadership. And we're seeing it play out. And it's really going to rear its head here as we enter the 2020 cycle, when you're going to have, anywhere from 30 to 40 candidates who are trying to run for the Democratic nomination. How he manages that. Plus, we've got to remember, too, the Democrat Party has basically been taken over by an angry socialist mob. And so as the candidates veer further and further to the extreme left to try to win their party's nomination, it's going to make it that much more difficult for them to come back to the middle and try to win a general election race against President Donald Trump.
So I don't want to get too happy about this because, I'm not called Stacey on the Right for nothing, Mark. I'm hoping for the reelection of Donald Trump in preparation for 2024 Nikki Haley. That's what I'm hoping for. But don't we kind of always hear a little bit about their disorganization and the lack of cohesion, and then they just pull it together? Isn't Soros going to dump a whole bunch of money in and kind of rescue the day for these people?
Well, and that's very likely. But the one thing you have to remember is that the Republican Party spent more than 2 years and tens of millions, if not of dollars, building their data operation. It is not something that a big check can necessarily solve. You need to build infrastructure. But even if you build that infrastructure, you still need time to collect and get all of that data. And so this is something that the Republicans have been working on really since the 2012 election. And so not only do we have the information from the 2016 campaign, we have some information from 12, 16, and now even 18. And it all goes into this system, which helps the Republican Party not only identify people who are likely to support our candidates, but the causes that they're interested in. It gives us a very strong backing. Even if you can build that system, you're going to have to get that data, and that takes a while.
So what about the influence of Facebook? Yesterday we had a guy on named Dr. Epstein. He's got this new documentary out called The Creepy Line, in which he outlines all of the ways that Google uses 200 other companies to spy on you and build this extensive database about who you are and what you buy and what your political leanings are and what you eat for breakfast, everything. And they want to have those listening devices, the Alexas and all that stuff in every room of your home so that you're never not being surveilled. And then you have Facebook, who really they're being credited with swaying suburban women voters away from the Republicans during the midterm. And they're estimating that 20% of, the American electorate could be swayed in one direction or other by manipulating search results or by controlling what people can see on Facebook. How do we account for that? Because that all goes to the left. That all leans liberal.
Well, and I think one thing is, and I'm never going to sell short the American voter, regardless of their party affiliation. I think the American people are a lot smarter than what a lot of folks in Washington, D.C. and New York City think they are, and especially on the conservative side, as it comes to the social media, as it comes to just information available on the Internet. I think we are becoming more and more savvy users. And so I do believe that we are going to be able to arm people with the information to be able to help identify how they might be underhandedly manipulated or directed to places by Silicon Valley and by the liberal billionaires who want us to only see the information that they want us to see. Mm-hmm. But you can be assured, and I can tell you this for a fact, that the president, the vice president, our campaign, the RNC, we're going to be very upfront, very forward-looking, and when it comes to making sure that people have access to the information to see the results, because this really is such an administration. The president is based on results. He's focused on them, and we're going to make sure that people know them, whether the mainstream media or Silicon Valley wants you to see that information or not.
Yeah, and we were staunchly, getting the truth out there through the entirety from before the president was inaugurated up until the midterms, and we will continue to do that here on the program. We would love to speak with Vice President Pence and have him share when we get closer to these really pivotal moments here on the air with us about what is being done. And the RNC operation has, in my opinion, been 100% turned around from the last time we had a presidential campaign. 2016 was executed well. And I agree with you, Mark. I'm concerned about what Silicon Valley does, but I am not at all out of respect and admiration for fellow Americans who know that you need to go to websites and read content for yourself. You can't only rely on your news feed on Facebook, and that there's a limit to how much we need to interact on social media. We really need to still be people and interact face-to-face, person-to-person, churches, organizations, civic groups, at the grocery store. That's where we get the vote out, and that's where we win these elections. And I think that Americans know that now, and that they're much more tuned in than they're maybe getting credit for.
I think you're absolutely right. And having spent a lot of the campaign trail both in 2016 and 18 with the president and the vice president, I can tell you the vice president, whenever he's on the stump, he often tells people, look, despite the ads and the people knocking on doors and all the things, the mailers that we flood people with during these campaign cycles, the most effective message and most effective messenger we have is people talking to their friends, their families, people at church, people at work, and telling them about the results and why it's important that they vote to continue the results and not just turn themselves into warriors for the resistance.
Absolutely. And the good thing, Mark, is anytime there's an advantage for the Democrats, what I'm noticing is that they're very good at shooting themselves in the foot. They actually gave the Senate to us in many ways through their behavior towards Justice Kavanaugh. And there was so much more at stake there. But the best part of the midterm that we were able to walk away with was the control of the Senate and the ability to continue to have constitutional judges all over the country and at the Supreme Court level when that next becomes available again. And we have to thank the Democrats for overplaying their hand severely with Kavanaugh for part of that victory.
I think you're absolutely right. And if history is any guide, look, we did the same thing back in the late 1990s when we retook control of Congress during the term of President Clinton.
Oh, yeah.
We overplayed our hands in many respects, and the American voters reacted negatively toward that. I think you'll see the same thing happen under Speaker Pelosi and with the socialists that are now going to be prominent in Congress. And we just need to make sure that the American people see it, they recognize it, and that we show them the better way forward, because that's the key, not just talking about it, not just labeling it, but making sure, and we know that we have that in President Trump, that we're going to show them our plan to how we can make America great again.
I love it. Well, you know what, Mark? It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. And we love the work you're doing. We're so excited about the prospects. I still think we can get great things done in the next 2 years until the 2020 election is upon us. And so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Stacey.
All right. Talk to you again soon. It's Mark Lauder, former special assistant to the president and press secretary to Vice President Pence. And he's right. The American people are smart enough to navigate their way around what are the traps and pitfalls set by an ever-increasingly liberal-leaning and really openly, unabashedly anti-American Silicon Valley establishment. But that's let's even go further than that. That doesn't even begin to make a dent in things as much as our prayers do. We have an opportunity to rely on God and let him show himself strong in our political processes, in our personal lives, and to be encouraged by him. I'm thinking of earlier this week at Bible study. I'd missed last week's Bible study because I wasn't feeling well that morning. And I should have just pushed through and gone, but I kind of gave in to the, you're overtired, you need rest, so I stayed home. Well, this week when I went, it was Tuesday, I go to Bible study, and I got in the room, and I immediately, I don't know what happened, but it felt like a ton of bricks just fell off my shoulders. And I instantly knew in that moment that even though I wasn't feeling that great last week, it was nothing contagious. I didn't have a fever or, a cough. I should have gone because the stress relief would have made me feel better. And once you get plugged into a small group or a Bible study or something like that, it can be such a relief valve for the stresses and strains of everyday living. And so I encourage you, I'm not saying this, there's never any judgment. When I encourage people to get in the pew on Sunday or Saturday, if you have Saturday services, when I encourage people to join a Bible study, it's never from a place of judgment or condemnation. It's like, this is something that's really been helping me and encouraging me and lifting me up. And I know it's something that could be the same for you. It could be a similar experience for you. So that's when I say that it's encouragement to give it a try and see if you can find something that meets your schedule and suits your kind of aspirations for a Bible study. Because some people really like a Bible study that's kind of like church where everyone's there. Some people prefer to be an all women's Bible study or all men's, if you're a guy. And it really is according to the person. That's why they have so many different types. Some people prefer to study books written by, Christian authors. Some people prefer specific Christian authors. And some people really love studies that are the actual book of the Bible, like, Joshua or Samuel, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, something like that. And so it's up to you which road you take. But if you are hesitant or you're maybe thinking, I don't know if I want to do it, give it a try. I remember the first Bible study I did as an adult where I had kind of been, like on 2 separate occasions, someone had said to me, oh, you're not in Bible study? And it was really judgmental. And I was thinking, oh, so you're just judging me in my time, And then I thought to myself, well, why aren't I in a Bible study? Is it because I haven't chosen one at church? And then, of course, I reared back up at myself and said, well, no one's asked you to be in Bible study. And you know how the Holy Spirit is. He was like, oh, so you need to be asked? And so someone asked me to join a Bible study. She was like, oh, you're going to love this. So I went, and I honestly thought to myself, this subject matter is an area in which God has really blessed us, and I don't need this Bible study. I need one on this topic, and I had one in mind. But it turns out I really did need to learn more about what the Bible said about that subject matter, and God used that Bible study to really open my eyes and kind of set me on a journey to improve that area of my life and to come into full obedience in that area, which I have not yet achieved, but I'm so much closer than I was before I was doing Bible study. And so since then, it's become kind of like, it's almost like a hobby that I actively pursue, which is, I have a few hobbies, things that I really love to do when I have free time, but Bible study is one of the ones that I call it a hobby, but it's really, I feel like it's a duty and an obligation to do it and to participate in it, because I never fail to be sitting there going over my Bible study homework, and I have the answer that I wrote, and then someone will share what they wrote, and it's a completely different perspective. And that's where I feel like the Lord really says, oh, you never thought about that, did you? Look, and your eyes are open to a whole nother avenue. Or someone will say, you know where else in the Bible that you can find that? And they'll bring another scripture reference into it, which I didn't find when I was studying it. So it's a great opportunity, and I encourage you to plug into a Bible study. If you feel like there's not one that is interesting to you, or you don't see anything available, just say a quick little prayer. Ask the Lord to send someone your way, and you will be, it's immediate. I literally said, well, no one's asked me, and within a week, 2 people asked me to join their Bible study. The one I chose to go into was perfect for what I was trying to do. I didn't think it was, but it turned out to be perfect. So I definitely want to encourage you to do that. When we get back, we will take calls, of course. We're always willing to take calls here on the show, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. We're going to talk about the NAFTA trade win that no one is talking about. And also, I want to remind you to go to the website and get your Christmas wristbands. The site you can go to is afastore.net, afastore.net. We'd be so excited to have you wearing the Christmas wristbands like I'm wearing the headbands, only these go on your wrist, and they're about keeping Christ in Christmas. Come on, let's get this thing going. All right, we'll be right back with more after this.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
John Stephen Akwari, a marathon runner from Tanzania, started the 1968 Olympic marathon race with hope and pride in his heart. He was a mentor to thousands of kids in his homeland. A few miles into the race, he took a tragic fall and was trampled by several other runners. Hours later, John Stephen Akwari hobbled into the stadium for his last excruciating lap and crossed the finish line to thunderous applause. The next day, when asked by reporters why he kept going when he knew he had no chance of receiving a medal, he said, "My country did not send me 5,000 miles to start a race. They sent me to finish one."
Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
Our concern about 13 Reasons Why has not diminished. If you've signed the AFA petition to Netflix CEO Reed Hastings, then you've probably heard the story of Anna Bright, who killed herself after binge watching the show. But did you know she wasn't the first, nor the last? Other young people have been influenced by this program and have taken their own lives. Netflix says they want to stimulate conversations about taboo topics like teen suicide, but they still refuse to have a conversation with the American Family Association about the dangers of their show. Please pray that God will change Mr. Hastings' mind so that he pulls 13 Reasons Why before another life is lost. Look for the AFA action alerts with information you can email and share on social media so that others can sign the petition too by visiting afa.net. Every vulnerable teen is another reason why.
Fox on Faith with Lauren Green.
One of the famous stories in the Old Testament is Jonah and the whale. For modern folks, the account seems improbable. But according to Dr. Timothy Keller, we can understand universal truths through Jonah's ordeal in his attempt to run from God.
He says he was so angry at God over his mercy to this group of people. At the very end, he says, "This is the reason I fled. I knew you're a merciful God, and I hate that about you."
Keller is the founder and retired senior minister of Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City. His latest book, called The Prodigal Prophet, explains how we can learn about racism, prejudice, politics, and power from this reluctant hero. God called Jonah to preach repentance to the Assyrians in Nineveh, the equivalent of what we would call a terrorist state. But Jonah fled from the task, not wanting his enemies to reap the benefit of God's mercy.
It's pretty relevant to us because, especially today, there's a tendency for us to write entire groups off, those countries, those races, or even that political party.
To hear more, go to our Lighthouse Faith podcast on foxnews.com. For Fox on Faith, Lauren Green, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
President Trump had been eyeing this global summit as an opportunity to showcase his deal-making skills. The signing ceremony this morning, that new trade deal that replaces NAFTA, the president there alongside his counterparts from Mexico and Canada.
Yeah, we just had, of course, the signature between the Canadians, the Americans, and the Mexicans of this new NAFTA, the U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement. That is a win for President Trump.
It is. It is a win that NAFTA is going to be dismantled and it will be replaced by the Mexico and Canada agreement, trade agreement. And we need to give credit where credit is due. And part of the negotiations for that would have been impossible with a Hillary Clinton president because she wouldn't have renegotiated NAFTA. She would have continued to allow American consumers to support other nations' workers over our own. And so the credit goes to President Trump for actually taking this on. Further development, remember we were just talking here on the program about Elizabeth Warren and a lot of people in her campaign, or I shouldn't say campaign. These are her staffers and supporters and advisors who are really upset about what's going on with this. It was an unforced error. She was not required to produce a DNA test. I don't care what President Trump said, and the fact that he was able to goad her into doing this doesn't. So what they're doing is they're assessing. Just like I said, They're looking at, okay, she made this unforced error just because someone said, I dare you to do this. You know, if you do, I'll give you this many millions of dollars or what have you. Whatever bluster the president put forward. And she fell for it. And now the Boston Globe is advising Elizabeth Warren to bow out of the 2020 field. This is pretty huge. So they used former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick's Thursday announcement that he would not make a run for president as an opportunity to advise Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat in Massachusetts, not to run, to make the same decision. It's the paper's editorial board. They said running for president is hard. Deciding not to run, that can be even harder. The Globe's board argued in 2015 the Democrats need Elizabeth Warren's voice in the 2016 presidential race. Now, it doesn't say explicitly that she shouldn't run, but it does lay out the case for why it would be an ill-advised effort on her part. Warren missed her moment in 2016, and there's reason to be skeptical of her prospective candidacy in 2020. While Warren won re-election, her margin for victory in November suggests there's a ceiling on her popularity. Wow, they're really analyzing her prospects here. Republican Governor Charlie Baker garnered more votes than her in a state that is supposed to be a Democratic haven. Meanwhile, a September poll indicated that Massachusetts voters were more enthusiastic about Patrick making a White House bid than Warren. The paper called the Massachusetts poll results warning signs from the voters who know her best. It also argued that Warren is the wrong type of candidate to take on Republican President Donald Trump in 2020. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. It's not just about her winning the nomination. It's about her taking on the incumbent. While Warren is an effective and impactful senator with an important voice nationally, she has become a divisive figure. A unifying voice is what the country needs now after the polarizing politics of Donald Trump. I think they probably favor Beto O'Rourke. And he's all flash and no potatoes. Like there's no real substantial, there's nothing to feast on there with Beto O'Rourke. He's a lot like Barack Obama, but he doesn't have the chops behind him. He's too much of like a skater dude to go the distance, if you will. So the advisors say Ms. Warren will have to confront the issue again if she announces a presidential campaign, which is expected in the coming weeks. And they expect her, they're advising her to make a plan to repair her relations with the native tribes and racial minorities, that the plan would have to include a strong statement of apology. So this is not a good day for her, not a good day for her presidential aspirations and really her Senate campaign. Because obviously she's always in campaign mode. All of them are, because they have to be reelected the next time. Let's go to the phones. We have Renee in Texas. Thank you for calling the show.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on. I would like to refer to the discussion you had earlier about what the Republicans were doing to improve things. The point I wanted to make is that if the Republicans don't fight this idea of coming up with votes at the last minute, and they allow them to steal the election, it doesn't matter how good the campaign is.
It's true. And so we saw what it looks like on both sides, didn't we, Renee? In Arizona, they just rolled over, and Sinema is going to go to the Senate. In Florida, they were like, not today. We're going to fight this. We're going to count every vote over and over and over again. And they were able to beat them back. The example is follow Rick Scott.
They should fight them tooth and nail.
Absolutely.
With everything they got. To me, if they do not have the votes in custody, kind of like evidence at a trial, if you don't have it in a chain of custody, it should not be counted.
Not only that, but what is this thing with finding 70,000 votes? This is not a tiny amount of votes. After.
Exactly.
So you literally, after the thing's over, then 70,000 votes show up. That's bigger than, like, if you think about, that's bigger than our 3 largest suburbs in the city of St. Louis are not 70,000 people. I mean, that's an outrageous number.
This is outright stealing.
It is.
And they're not even bothering to be, kind of hiding it.
No, they're just like, we're stealing this.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And the Republicans have been letting them get away with it.
I just want to know who's like, at what point do the Republicans say, okay, no more Mr. Nice Guy? This is the Republican Party under Donald Trump. When do they bring out their real steely, the steel in their spine and their we're all about business? When do they get a taste of that? I just can't believe they're letting it happen.
The other thing that I do not understand is that the people perpetrating this kind of thing don't even realize. It's like, if you do this, do you not understand that it could be used against you?
I want to see people go to jail. You know what, Renee? That's my thing. I want to see people who are stealing go to jail.
But, I mean, when you do underhanded things to people, then you're setting it up, have things done to you. We always want to keep things above board and honest, always, no matter what side we're on, so that we know that what we have is the right thing that happened.
I agree.
The honesty has to be there.
It does, and it also means that the next time we don't have to worry about dishonesty being done to us. But we also have to be willing to stand up and fight for what's right. And it's just weird to see that not happening in some of these elections where it's clear they're robbing the American voter blind, and the Republicans are kind of just standing back saying, well, what can we do?
Why would they sit on their hands like this? I don't understand it. And it doesn't make me want to vote for them.
I know. Doesn't it kind of dampen your enthusiasm when you see it? Because you're like, well, so we get out the vote, we knock the doors, we donate, we do everything we're supposed to do, and then the Democrats steal the election and the Republicans stand by and don't do anything. You know, but in the case of Sinema down in Arizona, I've seen many people say that the woman who would have won if she'd lost wasn't the one we wanted because she was like a replacement for John McCain, and we want a true conservative there, so it's probably better to have a liberal socialist that people will get tired of so we can win with a good person next time. I guess that's an okay sentiment, but still.
I would just rather have somebody who stands up for American values.
Me too. Me
Period.
too. No, you're right. You're right, Renee. Thank you for calling the show today. It's good to talk to you. All right. I'm with her. I mean, you know what really annoys me is that every time it's allowed to happen, then that means the next time they're like, well, you see what happened this time. It worked. We were able to pull it off. So, keeping 70,000 votes in a box someplace, that's a thing. We can make that happen. I don't know. We know that the Lord repays, so you don't get away with anything. We know that, but it's very frustrating and it is disheartening. It makes you feel like, what's the point if Democrats are just going to steal elections that they don't win because they want their candidate there? And also all of the what's being called diversity on the left-hand side of the aisle, which is really, it's not diversity at all. It's perversion. Electing people who, like, Sinema is an openly bisexual person, Really? That's a qualification for office? On the left, your actual choice of who you are intimate with becomes a voter block or an issue that people would say, oh, that we're definitely happy that she's there because of who she, has relations with. That's where we are in this country. At least on one side of the political aisle, that's where we are in this country. All right, so we were talking about that. And we also have this piece by a friend of mine. It's over at medium.com, Cameron Gray. And he's been talking about this 1944 Christmas classic, Baby It's Cold Outside, and the whole furor that began over the one radio station saying, well, we can't play this because it's a consent issue in the song. So this radio station in there were two stations that started off the furor. WDOK FM host Glenn Anderson first banned it, and then another station in San Francisco followed suit, and then stations in Canada. And, the station in Denver, which was one of the first ones to ban it, has reversed course and said, forget it. We're not going to stop this. But there's a lot of discussion and things that have been said in the wake of this Baby It's Cold Outside, the kind of the scandal around it. And my thing is that similar to what I said to Kimberly Klasick, but Cameron actually went a step further. And I can't read the lyrics here on the air on this good Christian radio network, But I can give you, so you got Going Bad by Meek Mill, a horrible song with just the worst kind of stuff. Sicko Mode by Travis Scott, who calls women the worst kinds of names. Mo Bamba by Sheck Wes. TikTok by 6ix9ine. Kika by 6ix9ine. And that's the top 10. These are the top 10 songs he found that were explicit lyrics that demean women and insult them and are the worst. And they're on today's Spotify chart. There are vivid descriptions of the mistreatment of women and aggression towards them sexually. But WDOK-FM doesn't have a problem playing those songs. And neither do any of these stations. I mean, just filth, pure garbage. And it gets played on Spotify all day, every day. But I bet you they have their own little symbol for the Me Too movement, just like Twitter does. So if a person is really concerned with mistreatment of women in music, there's a wealth of information out there for you to pull from. And we have to be prayerfully considering what role we play in this, if we're allowing our children to listen to this music, if we are listening to this music. And I've talked many times here on the air about how I like to listen to many different kinds of music, but nothing that's sexually explicit, nothing with profanity in it. I'm not going to, you gotta have standards, peeps. You gotta have standards. And we have to pray that the Lord would raise up a desire in especially our young people, but in all people, to not have their minds sullied through the listening. It's piped into your brain, literally. It's going straight into your brain. This music that glorifies the objectification of women and the mistreatment of women, and really sets such a low bar for behavior, not just towards women, but between people in general. Because it's no doubt in my mind that the people who sing these kinds of songs, they don't have any respect for themselves. That's why they sing these songs. They lack respect for themselves, and they don't respect women. They would say, oh, it's just music. I respect women. I respect my mom. I respect women, No, you don't. You don't respect yourself. How can you respect other people when you don't respect yourself? If you say the kinds of lyrics that are, they write this music, they write the lyrics, they set it to music, they promote it, they sing it over and over again at concerts. People clap and listen and pay big bucks to go to the concerts and listen to it. And this is culturally degrading, it's personally degrading, and it's destructive. It's the kind of music that, instead of uplifting and building up the synapses, and it's destroying them. You know how there was a big movement back, this is, 20 years ago, get kids to listen to classical music from the time they're born, when they're babies, play classical music all the time, and it was supposed to stimulate their brain and help them to do math and science, etc. Well, now we need a movement just to keep the profanity out. Forget about playing something to help their brains. Let's just not destroy their brains by piping in garbage. That's where we are. All right, that's the show for today. God bless you from the heartland. Back with more soon. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family